Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a truly wild, unprecedented narrative. We're breaking down Field Marshal Sarath Fonseka's gritty, first-hand account of the final days of the Sri Lankan Civil War. As the Army commander in May 2009, he had a unique, ground-level view of this 30-year war's incredible climax. We'll be using his recent interview to map out exactly how the final 72 hours unfolded, from radical battlefield tactics to some serious political friction going on behind closed doors. So let's just dive right into it. And to hook you right off the bat, just look at this quote. It's almost cinematic, right? The Army commander, the literal guy orchestrating the final push of the war, was 3,000 miles away, in China. As his troops were closing in on Velupillai Prabhakaran, the most wanted man in the country, Fonseka was walking the halls of a foreign capital, trying to finalize a weapons deal. It's just surreal. Section 1. Directing war from afar. So why was he there? Between May 11th and May 17th, which is arguably the most critical week in modern Sri Lankan history, Fonseka wasn't in his Colombo office. He had to be in China because of a massive looming deadline. Just to put things in perspective, look at the sheer scale of the military's equipment depletion at this point. Out of their 80 battle tanks, 50 had been completely destroyed. That left them with just 30. So Fonseka was over there urgently securing a $200 million deal for vital radar equipment and heavy artillery. The Chinese had given him a really strict 2-week ultimatum: show up and approve the purchase in person, or those weapons are getting sold to someone else. He knew that if the war ended before he signed that deal, the funding would likely be reallocated, which would leave the army severely weakened going forward. But, it begs the question, how do you actually command a war from a completely different time zone? Well, the answer is CDMA satellite phones. Standard radio communications were just way too vulnerable. The LTT could easily monitor them and anticipate troop movements. So from his office, and eventually from his base in China, Fonseka completely bypassed the standard radios. He used secure CDMA tech to speak directly with his generals on the front lines twice a day. This ensured that his orders were basically impenetrable to enemy intelligence. Section 2. Shifting ground tactics. Now, while that technology kept his orders secure, Fonseka claims it was a massive, fundamental shift in tactics on the ground that truly turned the tide of the entire war. For the longest time, the military had relied on moving large divisions straight down the main roads. The problem? It was highly predictable. The LTTE would just set up mortars along the routes and decimate the advancing troops, which led to some horrific casualties. Fonseka's new tactic changed all that. He completely abandoned the roads. Instead, he broke his forces down into tiny special forces units, sometimes literally just 10 men, and pushed them directly through the dense jungle. It was unpredictable, it completely bypassed the enemy's heavy artillery setups, and it totally overwhelmed the LTTE's defensive lines. And this new maneuverability was an absolute game changer for separating civilians from the combatants. Because of this tactical push, by mid-April 2009, they managed to safely extract a staggering 135,000 civilians right out of the main conflict zone. And they didn't stop there. Shortly after, a flanking maneuver allowed them to extract another 85,000 civilians. With the civilians largely out of the immediate firing line, the remaining LTTE fighters suddenly found themselves completely boxed in. They were eventually squeezed into a tiny, desperate strip of land just 400 meters wide. Section 3. Politics versus military command. But the battlefield definitely wasn't the only place Fonseka was fighting. Now, we are looking at this strictly through the lens of Fonseka's personal allegations here, but they paint a picture of some pretty severe political friction. For instance, he alleges that back in 2005, the administration essentially gave $2 million to the LTTE to enforce an election boycott. He also claims that in early 2009, politicians looking to secure northern votes forced him into a ceasefire. And maybe most controversially, he claims that during those final chaotic days of the war, politicians were actually trying to negotiate an LTTE surrender entirely behind his back. And Fonseka is extremely adamant about the deadly cost of these political moves. He recounts one specific, tragic incident where a politically mandated ceasefire in late January 2009 actually gave the LTTE enough breathing room to launch a massive, surprise counterattack. According to his account, this single, politically driven pause in the fighting cost the lives of 500 Sri Lankan soldiers. And what about that alleged $2 million payoff from 2005? Well, Fonseka draws a direct, devastating line from that money right back to the battlefield. He asserts that the LTT used those exact funds to buy fast attack boats. And those very boats, he claims, were later used to destroy a staggering 66%, literally two-thirds, of the Sri Lankan Navy's elite Devora squadron, which tragically took the lives of 150 naval personnel. Section 4. The final 72 hours. Okay, with all that heavy context established, let's fast forward to the moment Fonseka returns from China. The clock is really ticking now. By May 16th, the remnants of the LTTE, including their top leadership, are trapped in a tight geographic box, literally just 400 meters wide, pinned between the Nanthikadal Lagoon and the sea. The military has locked them in with a three-tier defense line, and over the next 4 days, this tiny strip of land is about to see the absolute climax of a 3-decade-long war. It all kicks off on the night of May 16th. Desperate to break the siege and escape into the thick Muliativu jungles, LTTE forces launched a massive assault right across the lagoon, trying to shatter the military's defense rings. But the military held the line. When the sun came up the next morning, 75 bodies were recovered from the water. According to Fonseka, this included Prabhakaran's wife and daughter, which strongly suggested the LTTE leader was trying to get his family out first. Then, the very next morning, May 17th, right as Fonseka is flying back from China, he claims the political maneuvering hit its absolute peak. He alleges that politicians and international bodies were frantically working the phones, trying to negotiate a surrender for the remaining LTTE leadership. But Fonseka was entirely against this. His doctrine was incredibly clear. No surrender, no negotiations, just finish the military objective. And this brings us directly to Fonseka's defense against the highly controversial white flag allegations, the claim that surrendering LTTE leaders were actually shot. Fonseka dismisses this entirely, pointing to the gritty reality of the battlefield on the night of May 17th. He describes a visibility zero environment, totally choked with smoke, lit only by the muzzle flashes of rifles. As he puts it, in a pitch-dark environment that looked like fire, the idea that anyone could clearly see or process a white flag in the middle of a desperate, chaotic firefight is, in his view, completely absurd. By May 18th, that relentless military pressure finally collapsed the LTTE's last structures. The combat was brutal, and it was definitive. By dawn, 135 LTTE members were dead, including senior leaders like Nadasen and Pulidevan. And by that afternoon, another major pocket fell, resulting in 225 more casualties, including Prabhakaran's eldest son, Charles Anthony. Section 5, May 19, The Discovery. So by the afternoon of May 18th, Fonseka actually went on national television to announce that the entire landmass had been secured. But, there was one massive, lingering problem. Velupillai Prabhakaran, the man who started it all, was nowhere to be found. The war wasn't truly over. Then, as dusk fell that evening, a breakthrough. Soldiers patrolling the northern edge of the Nanthikadal Lagoon noticed these really subtle movements in the thick mangroves. Fonseka immediately ordered his elite VIP commandos to surround the area. A fierce, close-quarters gunfight erupted right there in the mud and water, and it raged entirely through the night and into the dawn. And guys, here's where the story gets incredibly surreal. It's the morning of May 19th. While commandos are literally waist-deep in a lagoon, fighting the absolute last remnants of the LTTE, Fonseka is sitting in the Sri Lankan Parliament building. He is attending a celebratory tea party, receiving formal praise from the president for ending the war. And he knows full well that the final, most crucial firefight is literally still happening as they're all sipping their tea. And then the moment arrives. It's right around 10 a.m. Fonseka is walking out of the Parliament building when his secure phone suddenly rings. It's Major General Kamal Gunaratne on the line. He delivers the news. Sergeant Muthubanda has successfully identified the body. Velupillai Prabhakaran is dead. And at that exact, precise moment, standing outside Parliament, the 30-year war officially ended for the army commander. And honestly, that just brilliantly illustrates the sheer complexity of this whole historical event. We've looked at the intense logistics, the brutal tactical shifts, and some really heavy allegations of political maneuvering, all through the eyes of the man commanding the forces. And it leaves us with a pretty profound question. When you strip away the polished political speeches and look straight at the gritty, first-hand account of the battlefield commander, how does it fundamentally reshape our understanding of history? It's definitely something to think deeply about. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep learning, and I'll catch you on the next one.